That changes a lot of stuff.
You right. It does. All right, I'm gonna do a sound check. Let's see if it pops when it pops up over here.
That changes a lot of stuff.
You right. It does. All right, I'm gonna do a sound check. Let's see if it pops when it pops up over here.
I've got the channel on.
All right, I
So-
got sound on me.
Check it. My phone. Here's YouTube.
We're good.
Are we good? Okay.
We are good. All right. We're live.
It's got a pretty decent delay.
Yeah, there's all. Well, I don't have the latency set. I don't have it to be like ultra low latency. I just have it on normal,
Yeah. It should be about a 10-second lag.
which is good. That means if somebody cusses, I can just say fuck and I don't care because we're not here for kids. Like I love kids, but yeah, no, not a big deal. So we are live. I am Brad. That's Chris and Donald. We are not your typical IT guys, and we're here for the show. Got a fun one. The typical rundown of how we started out. Who we are. We're three guys with a dream of helping others to better navigate the crazy world of workstations and other fun work technologies. So yeah, if you're wanting to step out and have some fun, come along for the ride. We love to take lots of crazy tangents and do lots of crazy things. We'll see how that goes. But as a whole, welcome to the show. We don't have a fun little intro. That's the other thing we need. I'll do that. I'll write us a fun little intro.
Welcome to the big show.
Oh yeah.
Welcome to the big show.
Take lots of crazy.
I was like 5 when he was still a professional wrestler.
We'll see how that goes.
Let's go off the first tangent. When did Big Show actually retire? Big Show WWE. When did he retire? He's 50 now. He's from Aiken.
Most wrestlers are from the South.
I know, but it's weird. It's just like, oh yeah, Big Show's from Aiken. This is weird. Oh, he's actually still in the WWE. No, never mind. Until 2021.
I went ahead and shared that too, so it's out there. You gotta go share it to the social medias.
Oh jeez.
I mean, why not do that while since there's nobody on here right now? Might as well go share it to the social medias and let everybody join in because this is going to be a fun conversation. I think, at least. Oh yeah, I did log out.
We got a lot to talk about.
Yes, Facebook. I know. I haven't logged into Facebook. Like I said, since I reconfigured this thing, I still got to log into Facebook and all that other crap still. Things I haven't done. Yes, this was me. Two-factor authentication is definitely a good thing, but sometimes it's a slow thing. It is what it is. And it happens when it happens.
Donald, you're gonna have to up your beard game. Brad's got one. I got one.
Oh.
Donald,
Hey, I do have some ale. I am drinking an ale right now.
I meant beard.
Beard. Oh, I thought you said beer, like BEER.
Sorry.
I'm not drinking beer, Donald. Come on now.
Beard.
I love that it's blurring out the brand. We don't have brand favorites here. Not your
Schweppes.
typical IT guys.
I don't
No,
have a brand
beer.
favorite beer. Okay, yeah, I do, but it's just because
I was
it's
about to say
what I
yes, you
always
do. Bud
drink.
Heavies.
Oh, the Diesel's all the way. You gotta go. You
Diesel,
gotta go
the
with the Bud
Diesel's all the
Diesels.
way.
Yeah, jingle bells, Bud Diesel's all the way. That's right. Where is? What am I looking for? Now I wanted to click on something, but can't remember what. Man, you distracted me, Donald.
I distracted you.
Yeah, distractions happen all the time. Okay, into the show as we go. So I got this set up. We'll also repeat it back at the very end because it's part of the upcoming episode. So yes, this is episode 26. And yes, it's called When 26 Becomes 25 because episode 25 has not occurred yet. It will occur in the next 2 weeks or so, or maybe 3 weeks, depending on whenever we can arrange the special guest. In our upcoming episodes that are in the rundown here that you can see, basically we've got a couple of fun ones. All of them will have a special guest involved, and we'll tell you about it more when we get there. But we're going to be talking about some memory madness in episode 25. One of the next episodes coming up after that, we'll be talking about workstations in the CAD market. Got a great special guest for that one. A guy that's on YouTube that's actually prominent out there. Matter of fact, it's somebody that I've followed, and it was funny when I kind of became personal contacts and corresponding with him back and forth, talking about different workstation stuff. But I'll definitely put a link to him, whenever we get him in there, so that everybody can follow him too, because he's really big into the CAD market for people. And then we got another one with a possible special guest coming up for talking about RAID in the NVMe environment. And this is something Chris and I had been talking about a while back. That's kind of funny to me, but it, just ultimately, that's what I wanted to do. First of all, you need to go to the left. I know why I can't hear you guys very well, but that's because I've got my soundboard turned down. Like the output to me is turned down. There we go. But I wanted to make sure that it was kind of something that we can, it's just a conversation we want to be able to all talk about and have some fun with. It's a good little one to have. But yeah, RAID in the NVMe environment. But getting us into the fun topics to begin with, Chris, you had a post today about somebody that reached out to you about something, and having just changed a power supply myself, I went from a Corsair H1000i to a HX1000i to a Corsair HX1500i. And I will say, Chris, you might ask me, why didn't you go with something similar to what we have in the stop? What was that? Was that
the EVGA 1600?
Yeah, that's right. That's the EVGA 1600. The reason I went with the Corsair, so if you ever read up into the power supplies, the brand's cabling can be different a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So one of the easy things for me was and the reason I upgraded was I wanted to be able to put a couple more drives in onto my machine. And actually I got to the point where I couldn't boot the computer at one point last year because I had one too many drives plugged in. Like an extra U.2 drive literally tripped the power supply.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's how much
Awful.
crap I have in my machine. But so I wanted to upgrade it and be able to do something with it and add some more drives in the future. And in doing so, I went with the Corsair brand because the Corsair cables are a direct match from the HX, the cabling, because it's fully modular. And, that's a good thing to begin with. But two, basically I unplugged the power supply. The only cable I actually had to change, the 24 pin. That was the only one that was different between the two.
Not bad.
Here, I'll actually show you. This is the...
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to change power supplies and have to change all the cables out. That'd be a gigantic pain in the neck. Yep.
Got my lovely old HX1009.
Yep.
Another neat thing is in the new one, so they have like the Corsair Link thing with USB set up for it. On the newer HX, which in case you're wondering, the HX series was refreshed completely. the newer HX series, it is a little more efficient, even though they're both 80 plus platinum. The newer one actually does, it changed. It's still USB 2.0, but it went to a USB-C connector.
Yep.
So that was kind of nice. They updated that. But basically, it's the same. I mean, they look about the same. The only difference is it's a little bit wider and a little bit longer, and it's got, I think, five or six extra 8-pin PCI Express adapters on there. So or 8-pin, which actually they're also CPU outs too. You can use the actual CPU cable in the same slot as the PCI Express one. It's just different power rails. But I thought that was funny. So that was, yeah, that's one of the things that I did was I updated that. And you had somebody that reached out, so I'll let you explain that one, Chris.
So they called in off of Google and wanted to know if how much we would charge to repair a power supply that was fried. They had, so it was, yeah, and so you don't want to open up a power supply ever, unless you are incredibly trained and the capacitors are drained and it's not plugged in. Basically, you just never want to open up that power supply because if there is still charge in it and it's like, anything more than 12 volts, you're gonna get hit, and that could be anything from a burning your finger to death. Just go buy a new.
Well, as the resident, I've been shocked a lot. You definitely don't want to do it. That's for sure.
And the power supply even says, "Do not open this."
Well, and so as someone, I'm actually wearing my FR shirt right now from work because I have to sometimes go into high voltage switch yards or something like that. And the one thing that we talk about when you talk about switch yard access and training is voltage distance differences. So lower voltages like sub 100 volts or actually sub 240 volt. That's the kind of power that when it gets you, it grabs on and holds. And it'll go. And what people don't realize is with the power supply in a computer, you're stepping the power voltage down, but the amperage up.
Amps go up a lot.
And
yeah.
What's deadly to humans in general is not the voltage, it's the amperage. Well, okay, voltage is heat in general, but the current is nowhere near as bad as the power, or the current being the amperage is what'll get you.
When we look at, I'm trying to pull up the amps for a 13900K.
Well, I mean, you can do the math on it. It's 12 volt rail and it can pull up to 256 watts. So that's going to be 20 amps, basically, a little over 20 amps, 21 amps, something like that.
Can't 5 amps kill you?
Oh God, less than that. I mean,
yeah.
Let me see if I got the picture, or let me see where I have the picture. I know I have it. I just got to find out because I actually took a picture of it. I always take a picture of it every time I have to do the training every year, and I have to do it every year in December. So let me go find it because that's a good one to know. And like I said, because I'm just weird like that and take the picture of it every year just
wow.
For knowledge.
So the 13900K can actually pull up to. I got a PC World article. Put it in chat on the.
Okay, here you go. I have.
It's doing about 470 watts. Incentive.
All right, so amperage. All right, 0 to 2 amps is sensation and wild. Painful shock. I know. Let me rephrase. Milliamps, not single amps. Milliamps. So 2 milliamps is a mild sensation. Less than 10 milliamps is painful shock. At 200 milliamps, not amps, 200 milliamps. So that's 0.2 amps. If it runs through your body, 0.2 amps runs through your body, it will cause ventricular fibrillation. At 400 amps, 400 milliamps, stoppage of breathing. You get a severe shock at 30 milliamps. That's crazy.
Yeah. Don't
mess with power.
where the story is, don't try to fix your power supply, just go buy a new one.
Yeah, I mean, and realistically, when you think about it, the labor to fix a PSU, it's probably cheaper to buy a power supply anyway, a new one anyways.
Unless it's like a 1500 watt, but I doubt that most people are gonna have a 1500 watt power supply.
So I looked at it this way. So if you got just go. I mean, realistically, be real. What's everybody's time worth? About $100 an hour. You know, from doing
1 to 200, yeah.
Doing that kind of work, $100 an hour.
Yeah.
Look at Josie being on here. I haven't seen her in forever. I hope she's doing well.
She one of your friends?
Oh yeah, used to work with her. Actually.
Okay. Cool. I'm like, who is this person?
Yeah. Hey Josie, how you doing? But at $100 an hour, if it takes you just 2 hours to repair the PSU, dude, you're talking like, go buy a 1500 watt power supply for that.
Yeah.
I mean, plus not to mention you got to ship the sucker there and back. That's going to be at least, unless you live close enough to bring it to you. That's still not great, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
So,
why, hello there.
Next point.
Yeah. On to the next point, though. The great upgrade debate. So, Chris, I'll let you. Okay, when I say what we're all currently using, hey, glad. That's why I shared it on Facebook. That's exactly why I did that. To bring in more folks, get more folks to come check it out and see it and say hello. It's good to see you too. Stick around, you might find out something funny, something weird about all of us. Look at Donald putting on marketing shirts. I tell you, I just noticed that too. There you go. So Donald, we'll start with you, and I don't want you to just go with like your desktop. Go with like general purpose. What are you using, and then what's your daily driver, and what's like your secondary thing and that kind of setup.
So, all right, daily driver, what I normally use for most of my modeling or my CAD work, I'll use my personal desktop, which has a Alder Lake 12700K F, 64 gigs of DDR5 clocked at 6000 on a Z690 chipset, and I
heard that too.
Yeah, I was like, what? We heard like fireworks or something in the background.
Fire.
Or something like that. And a RTX 6000. Not the new Ada 6000.
The last
I
of
wish.
the Quadros. The last of the
Quadros. The last Quadro 6000. Which it's been a solid, dependable workhorse for me. When it first came out, I built it. I built this back in January, a little bit after Alder Lake came out. So there was a little bit of hiccups, trying to get the memory to work correctly. But since then, it's been.
Yeah, but that's because you had a bent pen.
That is true. I did have a bent pen on my processor, which I fixed somehow, and it works. So.
I've done it too. It happens.
It happens. It happens.
And it was bent out of your own accord either. That's the other thing to state. You didn't bend it. It came that way.
It came bent. Yes.
Which
I did not intentionally try to shaft myself like that.
I had my motherboard come that way too. But yeah, go on.
let's see. I've got 2 different laptops. Well, 3 laptops, but 2 different laptops that I jump back and forth on depending on what I'm using or depending on what I need it for. My 77, my Dell Dimension 7760 has a Xeon. You're gonna have to refresh me on what it is, on what Xeon it is, Brad, because I can't remember offhand. But it's a Xeon
It's Xeon
with
W.
100 with 100 yeah, Xeon W with 128 gigs of DDR4. That is specifically for doing some of our scan data processing because you just need that amount of RAM to be able to efficiently work. The other laptop, which is the one I mainly use on the road when I don't have to process, is a Precision 7770 with a i9 12900 and 64 gigs of RAM, which it does its best. I can get into the whole conversation about thermals with that thing and how it
Actually,
throttles.
You need to check and update your BIOS. You should be able to get better off now.
And I think I did have a BIOS update come through on Windows Update a couple like a week or two ago.
I'd go
So-
check on the Dell website because that should help a lot with that.
Okay.
That and taking it and working outside these days.
Yeah. Just walk outside and it'll do great just from how cold it is. But those are my those are my main workhorse computers. And if I need to have any larger use of RAM or whatnot, I'll head to the office and I'll grab the Tower of Power, which has dual Xeon Gold. What are they? 60?
No, they're
They're
60,
not 60s?
They're 62.
Like 34s?
No, 6230s, I believe.
6230s, yeah. And 768 gigs of RAM. Which I've maxed out before with our workload.
Oh, that's not a hard thing to do.
It's not hard at all. So yeah, so those are all of my those are my current computers that I work with.
All right, Chris, go next.
So I've got my main rig at home is a Ryzen 7 3800X with a 2080 Super and 32 gigs of DDR4 and a whole bunch of RGB. And then I've got a little media server that is a i5 4590 with
Dude, gotta upgrade you.
what? Well, I'm getting there. With like 16 gigs of DDR3 and no video card because it's just a media server.
Yeah.
But I've changed the case a number of times and I've changed the cooling a number of times. And with the cats and everything, I'm moving it from a big cube chassis to like HTPT chassis. So it's going from something like that tall to something about that tall.
Oh yeah, nice.
So it's gonna get a short cooler and some Noctua fans, and then it's gonna replace the VCR. But as far as DPC for me, probably just gonna be a Raptor Lake, like i5 or i7, with like maybe like a 4080. Because I do want to play higher graphics games, and Turing is not holding up too great.
Yeah, it is. It is coming EOL. What's the streaming rig you got too?
Oh, we got, yeah, that does more just like recording now. but that is that if we did live streams a lot, well, if we started doing that again, that actually might change. Because that's a 3960X with 64 gigs of RAM and a 2060 non-super.
Yeah.
Which is beaten by a 2900K now. But I mean, we got the processor for free from AMD, so
Gotta
it
put it to
just does
use.
recording. Yeah, I mean,
It's still a good CPU. It's, I mean,
oh yeah,
things that
I think it.
yeah, I mean, you just gotta think back to like what things were like
Yeah,
just a couple of like short years ago. I mean, heck, a 7950X would be probably 2 to 3 times faster than it. Well, I said two, but at least one time fast. At least, yeah, probably 2 times faster than it now, or at least like 190% faster than, and it's got less cores.
and then
Go ahead.
and then I've got a some. It's a Acer Swift 3. Um, it's a Tiger Lake i7.
Ooh,
I have no idea what. It's a little laptop that I bought like a year and a half ago. You know,
I gotcha.
I don't know what the specs are. It's a laptop.
Yeah, little laptops like that, nobody's gonna. I mean, they're general purpose
Yeah,
PCs that they.
I've I went to upgrade the media server to maybe like a Raptor like i5 and like a 4060 with a bunch of hard drives. Because then we can actually play games on
With hard drives? Right,
it. Because it's a media server.
just do a couple of high capacity SSDs. Have you seen how cheap the 4 terabyte SATA SSDs are now?
They cost more than hard drives, and it's
Oh, of
just a
course they
media
do.
server.
Of course they do, but they're also smaller and burn less power and heat.
Yeah, it doesn't work that much.
Yeah, that's true. I still have a bunch of hard drives in my computer, um, even in the doctor. Let's see. Matter of fact, I'll say. Let's see. So I got 32. That's 44. Then that's 60. What's 44 plus 32 is 76. Yeah, so I've just in my just on the doctor I have 76 terabytes of hard
Ooh.
drive space. Hard
Wow.
drive. Terabytes. Now, of NVMe or of SSD, I have 4 terabytes of SATA. I have 2 terabytes of Optane. I have 6 terabytes of NVMe drives. And I'll probably, which actually, okay, all right, this is shameless plug, but if you're looking for something that you want like a hardcore good OS drive or something like that, and you're looking for something for a machine you're building or whatnot right now, so I'm gonna swap over to the display. Go over here, get a new egg. There's a deal that's out there that if you don't have it or you haven't gotten it, but then go components, SSDs, enterprise. The 905p 960 gig U.2. It also comes with. It has a U.2 connector with the little power adapter for SATA that you have to use, and to NVMe to M.2 NVMe adapter cable. So you could use that. That's actually a pretty cool little setup. So if you're looking for something like that, that's kind of a cool thing. So what did that sound just come out? Oh, it came out
One
of my
thing that I'm on, I'm also on Newegg right now. I'm looking at a pretty solid deal. But Honey's telling me it's actually a little bit cheaper at Walmart, surprisingly. Or I should say not surprisingly. But the Western Digital Black, the SN770,
Yep.
M.2, 2 terabyte is on sale for $150.
That's not bad at all.
For 2 terabytes, that's not bad. And the 1 terabyte's $80
Well, heck, the
right now.
the 980 Pro was sub $200.
Yeah, I mean
it was
it's
like 180 for the 980 Pro now. Now the 990 is released, and the 990 4 terabyte comes out in a couple of months, I think.
that's probably why the 770 is so cheap, is because they're probably about to release the next gen for it, like the 780
Well, and
or whatever the next gen
the
is.
reason I bring up and even mention the Optane drive is because those things are from an OS perspective only, not like a backup, not like a game drive or anything like that. OS only, which IOPS are king in OS. You want to boot quickly. Optane is still king, even if they did discontinue it. But they do have these drives, and it is a PCI Express by 4 card, or by 4 bandwidth for U.2. So, I mean, you're still getting that full bandwidth that you can use, and you really can't do anything like that that's going to be faster than U.2. So, faster than PCI Express 2.0x4. What?
That's 10 drive writes per day. Wow.
Yep. The endurance is ridiculous on it. It's amazingly great for performance. And like I said, we talk about workstation stuff more often than we talk about, just your general computer. But even for a gaming PC or something like that, that's freaking ridiculous right there.
It's $400.
It's okay. It's $400. Do you know what this thing sold for on launch?
Well, more than that. Yeah.
Well north of $1,000.
Yeah.
It was like
it was
like $1,200 at launch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to be a quarter of that price because they're trying to unload them, they have a crap ton of them in stock. And I did the testing on it. These things are awesome. If they had the the AICs, that'd be great too. But I'll go into mine. So what we're streaming from currently, which is my primary rig, is what I named way back in the day, back in 2008 or 9, the Doctor. It is a Core i9. It got updated over the years, but it's a Core i9. It's custom built Core i9 1090XE with a custom water loop with a 480 rad, double thick rad, 480 millimeter double thick rad, and then a 15, which I just upgraded that the other day, a 1500 watt PSU, Corsair PSU. It's got dual A6000s NVLink together in it. It has 256 gigs of DDR4 3000 memory. It is overclocked. It has 4 cores that can achieve 5.1 gigahertz. 8 cores that can achieve 4.8 gigahertz, and the rest of them I have set to max turbo to 4.3. So it can boost pretty high, and it does really well when it does that. Also, it has, like I said, more storage than you can shake a stick at. That's because it is what it is. The reason I don't have like a 13900K or something like that for my primary workstation is because of both I/O and storage. I actually utilize all 7. Well, 2 of the GPU cards occupy the space, but I have all 7 of my PCI Express slots occupied, and I use them at X16 capacity. Then on the backside, in the same case, we have the stop, which is the primary processing workhorse that I use. It's got dual Xeon 8258s or 8358s, 8352s.
8358s.
That's what I thought. I have it pulled up here. I can look at Xeon Scalable 3rd Gen. Yeah.
I can just go to the website.
Yep, 8358s, which have a base clock of 2.6. No, it's the 8352.
No, it's the 8358.
You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. It is the 8358.
I'm looking at the specs.
You are. I mean, I can look at it if I wanted to as well. But okay, and that's got a terabyte of RAM in it. It's got, once again, more storage you can shake a stick at.
What's your video card? Because you moved the A6s in the doctor.
I've got an A2 and a RTX 5 in there, a Quadro RTX 5000 in there. Because like I said, because most of what I do on that machine doesn't need high-end GPU processing. I just run it runs remote. I run it remote. As a matter of fact, the only cable connected to it is a USB cable and an Ethernet cable. There isn't there's a USB dongle that gets plugged into it, but that's about it. I mean, everything else is done from the doctor, managed on the 4 screens that I have for my workstation, which are tied into those A6000s. And it runs quite handily. Does great. And then I have a Precision 7770 from Dell that is got a 12950HX, which gets to have that lovely heating issue sometimes. But I did get to beta test the new BIOS, which is running well with it. It does hit most of its max clock speeds pretty well now. There are some issues where it needed to be undervolted. And if people don't know what that is, it's basically where the CPU is drawing too many volts. And because of that, it's heating up too much thermally. So it's constantly thermally throttling. Doesn't do that anymore. But I was also getting fun questions from Dell as to how in the ham sandwich I was at idle running 60 something watts through the CPU. So that was kind of fun. Well, 56 watts through the CPU at idle, which they were like, how are you doing that? I was like, I'm awesome. I don't know. Because the, base of it's 55 TDP. And then I also have a more interesting than that. I just finished testing and I'm sending it back now. I had a P360 Ultra from Lenovo that I was testing and did a bunch of testing on it that had a 12700K or no, 12709K and a A5000 mobile processor. That thing was fun. We can talk about that more. If all you need is a good little workstation that's portable, that's got actually connectivity for technically 7 monitors, that thing's awesome. That's sweet. And I can't do digital signage on 7 because that's 2 different GPUs, but you could do 7 indirect monitors. Then right now, what I've currently been using and what I like an awful lot these days is the ThinkPad P16 with the 12950HX as well. I'll go ahead and say it this way: from a thermal standpoint, Lenovo did not sacrifice. So it is a thicker laptop than the 7770. It's it lost some drives because it's only got 2 NVMe drive bays on it. But honestly, I'll be the first person to tell you, losing those drive bays was not a big deal. It's still a good machine. It performs, I would say, better than the 7770 most of the time, just because it is, like I said, thicker, so it's got more heat dissipation. Just like anything else, the one sad thing to all of them is they don't run a 300 watt power supply with them. I wish they did. They run 230s or 240s. If they had a bigger PSU, it'd be better. But it's got the P16 and the 7770 both have A5500 mobile GPUs. Basically, the A4000. It's a little better than the A4000 desktop GPU. They're great little runners. And then, of course, for like you get outside of that kind of stuff, I have an iPad Pro that I use for like music creation, stuff like that. And, I'm probably the weird one. Well, I wouldn't say I'm the weird one. Chris might be the weird one in the case of the three of us, because Chris is the Android boy. Me and Donald both have iPhones, but you know, it is what it is. But we mentioned all that to talk about some of the upgrade possibilities. What are good upgrades for workstations? Because right now we're kind of in this limbo stage where, yes, you could go with a Threadripper Pro, the 5000 series, great CPU, up to 64 cores, single socket, terabyte of RAM, 8 DIMMs, awesome. Lots of PCI Express lanes there. Or you could go with a dual socket Xeon or single socket Xeon W Ice Lake machine, depending on where you go. As long as you're staying above Cascade Lake, you're doing better off than you were. But it's the problem with a workstation in that sense is that that's what you're going for when you're going for I/O. If you're using consumer grade chips, you're with the i9, i7 line, there isn't an HEDT processor out there. There isn't something in between. Now, there should be something coming, hopefully, and hopefully AMD will challenge that. If Intel does launch with Sapphire Rapids a non-Xeon, scalable processor, or whatever you want to call whatever they end up calling the next gen stuff, they do launch something that's in that lower tier, I think you're going to see a lot of companies sap those up, because yes, 8 cores and 8 big cores and 16 little cores in Raptor Lake's great, but if you had, just imagine if you had 24 big cores, or 32 big cores, something like that, where still you could get to like 5.2 or 5.3 gigahertz on 1 or 2 of the cores, and then the rest of them were in the low fours, kind of like my Cascade Lake processor is. I mean, if you do that, I mean, that's pretty much.
I'm selling that one for days.
Huh?
I would sell that thing for days.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it would also force AMD into the situation where they got to do something, because that's the problem, is not having a stopgap between what I call not even high-end workstation, but a extreme high-end workstation with dual socket setup, and or Threadripper Pro based, upper end Threadripper Pro. Really, right now, the only options you have are Threadripper Pro if you need I/O. Yeah, if you got to drop, Donald, you got to drop, buddy. No big deal.
Yeah, I just didn't want to interrupt you while you were talking.
You're good, man. If you got to drop out.
Yeah.
If you can make it back, make it back.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's like there's a dead space where Threadripper non-pro was, where if you don't need, well, because now the i9s are getting so, and Ryzen's are getting so punchy.
Oh yeah, they're punching well above their weight class. But
yeah.
But what they lack is I/O support. I mean, if they had a chipset from a workstation upgrade perspective, if they had a chipset where you had, if they offered a CPU that had the I/O of half of what their workstation bases are, I mean, I don't even think Intel would need a lower end setup. They just need a more I/O based CPU.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, we've seen the photos from stuff where they had like the big monolithic dies. That's probably going to be something where they put it in that range. I mean, no guarantees obviously, but likely. That is, that's what people are going to want, because I/O, I mean, limiting yourself is such a pain sometimes, when you do end up limiting yourself like that, it's kind of crazy.
I find myself missing X299 just a little bit.
Oh God, yeah, dude. I do all the time. We shouldn't, but I definitely do.
Like, and it's funny because we really didn't sell much of. We sold one X99. We sold well, maybe 2 or 3 X299, but we can never do like a 10980. I think the nicest 10th gen Cascade Lake we did was like a 10900X.
And why? I mean, I can tell you why pretty easily. So let me go back to ARC real quick, my ARC page.
And keep in mind, at the same time, we were doing a lot of 9900Ks.
Oh yeah, but so think about it this way: if you had a, and here it gets back to the problem with I/O. So a 10900K had, not 10900, a 10980XE, which is what I've got, has
48.
So I'm trying to remember his number. PCI Express lanes. Yep, it has 48 lanes off the chip, and then 16 lanes off of the chipset.
Yep.
So 64 total lanes. Now, if you got something like I have with an Asus Sage board, you can actually subdivide those lanes out. And it's got a PCI Express switch on it, so it divides out how stuff goes to it. But I mean, two 16x graphics cards, a 16x daughter card that goes with that. I mean, that right there is your 48. And then the rest of it, I'm pulling off the thing, but it's, X4, X, and two X4 cards. One's an X4, one's an X2 card, because one's the 10 gig. No, they're both X4s. But an X4 and an two X4 cards, one being a Optane 905p AIC, and the other being a Intel X550 T2. So the 10 gig card that I have. Because the Sage board that I have only has dual 1 gig NICs on board, but the T2 is 10 gig. So I mean, when you get into that kind of perspective, I mean, I/O is king there. And that's why Threadripper and Threadripper Pro are such a big deal. Well, now you're like, okay, so the rumblings are if that single monolithic thing comes out, it's going to have 64 CPU lane or CPU PCI Express lanes and 16 chipset lanes, but it's also going to be DMI 4.0, which means it's going to be at 4.0 speeds. But you also had, with the HEDTs of old, you had double the DMI lanes. You had 8 DMI lanes as opposed to 4. So you actually got effectively more PCI. You had more effective bandwidth to everything. Which once again, that's what you need in the grand scheme of things. You need the bandwidth. You really and truly need that bandwidth. So say all that, have all that discussion. Big thing coming back to it is why has AMD kind of abandoned HEDT from the perspective of the regular Threadripper? I don't know. I mean, I hope they come back with like a 7000 series, but I don't think they will. I think they'll still call it a Pro, but it'll be a Pro, whatever you want to call it, possibly in the next gen. But I mean, right now, even the rosiest of projections from people are latter part of next year. Which, I mean, AMD has they have had a window to really, because I mean, that's the thing when it comes to selling machines. There's 3 markets that you got to cover, and right now they're really they're trying to cover all 3, but really they're only covering 2. They've got the server market, which is where they're taking their market share with Genoa and Epic CPUs. You've got consumer, which they have Ryzen, and Ryzen's doing well. And then you've got your HEDT type workstation, which they're saying, well, Threadripper Pro fills that void. But I mean, I've got testing that proves that and I've yet to see the 5950 or the Pro 5000 series, but I mean, it didn't get a 20% jump, maybe that on it from the effective bandwidth boost from the unified cache. But so we're talking about I was having a 10980XE that was competing with their 32 core in rendering, in CPU based rendering. Let me backtrack that statement. In rendering, in scan processing, and a lot of things. Okay, and it was going toe for toe with the 32 core. So if the 32 core gets 20% more, okay, so that's a 5% reduction in time probably for doing stuff. I mean, not really worth the upgrade. Just find a better I mean, it's probably cheaper to find a better cooling solution and boost the 10980XE. Just push it a little bit harder. I mean, it's got all the thermal headroom in the world, especially if you got a good sample, a good chip on it. But I mean, the point being is you're back to the same problem. So they're trying to say that they filled it with that void, but Xeon W doesn't really exists, but it doesn't. I mean, and it is Xeon W is the other solution, but nobody's selling that right now because everybody thought Sapphire Rapids would have been out in August of this year.
We had sold
one or two, I think.
Two rigs on Ice Lake, Super Tower and Pixel Maestro, which Pixel is like half a Super Tower.
But like HEDT feels deader than the world, but I mean that's the thing. Like Intel knows that there's a market there because they also know that nobody has really corporately, nobody's really been upgrading machines because of COVID and everything. So they kind of stalled all that out and pushed everything out, and everybody's waiting for Sapphire Rapids for a response there. And a mid-level machine that gets you all the things that you need, that's it's kind of the way I think things should go. I mean, you don't need everything, and if you can take that market and take it by storm, because you don't need. And that's the other thing where AMD's kind of cornered themselves in the perspective is let me hit up Newegg again. How much does a 64 core cost?
Me about $6,000.
Not you, but like what's the market price is what I'm getting at.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm hitting Threadripper Pro real quick.
See.
6,500 for a 64 core. A 32 core is $3,300. $6,500. And then the 16 core is still $1,200.
What's the 24 core at?
Huh?
What's the 24 core?
2280.
Okay.
Which, I mean, I'm gonna say that's ridiculous, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, if and Intel can undercut that market pretty heavily. If they come out and they've got a 16 core that's $1,000, 16 big cores that's $1,000, 18 big cores, and they probably want to probably 16 big cores that's $800. 18 or 20 big cores that's $1,000. 24 that's $1,500, and then maybe if they do something bigger than that, maybe let's say they go 28 like the old Cascade Lake, but on the Golden Cove core setup, they go 28 cores and it's $2,000. That's going to be competitive, pretty close. I mean, it won't quite hit the 64 core in performance and per core performance, but it'll probably be competitive with the 32 core for $1,000 less. $1,000 to $1,500 less, and with the
Like-
ability to turbo once again over 5 gigahertz on a couple of cores. That's huge, dude. I mean, call it what you want to call it. Then you've got so you got that. Now you got the next one up on the list. The next thing up on the list is they go up the stack it with Sapphire Rapids. And I mean, even if it's single socket with 56 threads, but it doesn't turbo but to 5 gigahertz on the top 2 cores or something like that. I mean, and the base clock is like 2.8 gigahertz or 2.5. And it's all core turbos like 4.3 or 4.4 gigahertz. Dude, that's still going to destroy a 64 core Threadripper Pro. And now when the next gen 64 core comes out, but once again, that's slated for probably 6 to 12 months after Sapphire Rapids. Like that's what the everybody out there talks about. I mean, who knows when it actually comes out, if it comes out next year at all. But it's like, okay, that's a market that probably 15 to 20% of computer purchasing consumers live in. You know, so you've got about, of the 100% of PCs bought, you know, probably 45 to 50% of that is consumer based. 35 to 40% is server based. And then the rest is that slim, you call it a slim window, but it's still a window of, 15% market share. I guarantee you there's plenty of people like me out there waiting to see what Sapphire Rapids does. And if it's something that would make sense for them to buy and upgrade to.
We've got a pending sale for like $50K for a Sapphire Rapids rig that has been waiting for like 8 months. It's somebody else. But
don't surprise me. I mean, you and I have talked about it for a while. I mean, and I'm the first person to say, like, hardware agnostics, you need to be aware of everything. Threadripper Pro is a big deal.
Yeah.
And totally worth the time to go out and check it out and utilize it. And a lot of things. Dude, once again, if you're in the media creation group, like if you're doing like media content creation stuff, Threadripper is freaking awesome. Like if you're in the VR world and you're doing stuff in Unreal Engine, that thing is a beast. And Sapphire Rapids, a small core Sapphire Rapids, isn't going to compete with a 32 or 64 girl setup. Oh boy, spam!
I got the spam.
Take care. Gotta love spam. But I mean, to me, you gotta be crazy to not be out there and interested. But yeah, so I gotta go into the next thing with just a happy holiday season. So we'll jump to this in the hot takes pretty quick. Well, we'll jump into the news. We'll do the news, then we'll come back to the holiday and stuff. So news-wise, we kind of talked about it last time, but I want to talk about it again. Intel wanting to become the second largest foundry service by 2030.
Aggressive.
Ambitious. Yes, ambitious. Possible. Absolutely. I mean, if they remain on target with their plans as of right now, I wouldn't be surprised if they did it at all. Not in the slightest. Would not surprise me in the slightest. Will they? We shall see. But I mean, I'd like to think they have every opportunity, especially considering all the things that they're dumping, all the money that they're dumping into it. And I'm actually going to jump on this one to another article, just because I'm going to do it anyways, and it makes sense to go there now. But
yeah,
they have another story in the rundown about why are all the fabs coming to America. like, why is there so much money being poured into fabs in America? One, the CHIPS Act. So Congress is saying that people need to, like, they're willing to invest money and spend government money, which is not a bad thing in this case, to bring manufacturing nodes back to the U.S. So TSMC is actually going to build an N4 node at their Fab 21 in Arizona that they're building right now. Now, when it launches, I think it's supposed to launch this year or next year. Well, it can't be 2022, it'll be 2023 this year. It'll only have N5, but they'll have it behind that in 2024. They'll have N4. Now, this is not going to be. TSMC is committed that TSMC is only where you'll be able to buy. What do you call it? TSMC is the only place you'll be able to. The only place you'll be able to manufacture bleeding edge nodes is in Taiwan. But that's okay too. I mean, nothing wrong with that. And then lastly, behind that, Intel is, which I think they have the thing where it tells us where Intel's dumping the money into it too for their other ones. Intel's building a bunch of fabs in the U.S. They're also going to build some in Ohio. Like right now, most of their stuff's on the West Coast. They're going to build some in Ohio, and then they're also going to build some in what do you call it? They're also going to do it in. Why can't I think, Chris? Europe too. They're also going to put some up in Europe. So I mean that's like I said, all good things. All good things. Popping down here along with some of the other stuff. Okay, so we've been talking about AMD and how they kind of have been leaving HEDT to the end. The other thing that kills me is, and it's not doing what I want to do, but I'll just drag it up here. So the new graphics cards from AMD have launched, and yeah, I mean it's somewhere in this range, but I'm leaning more down than I am up right now. The only perk that I see to this is AMD with the 7900 XTX. If they do launch, which they didn't last generation, it kind of pissed me off. If they do launch a workstation variant with 48 gigs, and then a 7900 XT variant with 40 gigs, I mean that's where, you know, there's some competition there, but it's like they're not like. So what, you know, ask the question, call it what you want to call it, think about it from a perspective. Why is the 7900 XTX and XT not as good as a 4090? Well, simply put, they didn't push it. One, and two, it's the first chiplet-based GPU. So just like with Ryzen, when they launched Ryzen, you know, the first and second gen Ryzen, and it was chiplet-based, and everybody's like, well, these are great. But there's latency issues, memory bandwidth issues, stuff that still has to be worked out. And yes, drivers could come out and fix this and bring this up more on par with, you know, because for all intents and purposes, here's the actual consumer-based target thing that I have. The hierarchy from Tom's Hardware, which I think is a great one. And actually, I have this up as well that I can drag up there too, which is the back. Go to the GPU database and pull up the 4090.
That's a cool chart.
Yeah, that is a cool little flow chart. I like it. And that's the 4090 at the top.
I see the Asus Noctua card. That makes me laugh.
Where's the Asus? The oh God. I'm
Back to
telling
a
you,
card.
people have to do things differently. They have to.
Oh boy.
But if you look at the benchmark ranking, okay, you have 4080 right now that sits right underneath the 7900 XTX. Now, I mean, call it what you want to call it, but the 4080 has the cooler of a 4090. If you have a way to push that sucker, it's going to beat the 7900 XTX all day long. Yes, the 7900 XTX can go pretty heavily too, but yeah. But it's still, just looking at the relative performance. So the 4090 is, all right, let's compare it. Let's say with 7900 XTX. So the 4090 is 20% better than a 7900 XTX. The 4080 in relative performance is 4% slower than the 7900 XTX. And it's still faster than the XTX. Now, yes, it is more than $1,000. That sucks. But if you look at what the 3080 launched for, that was
It was like
700 bucks.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the 3080 Ti, which to me is probably a more comparable GPU, it launched for 1,200 bucks.
1,000? Oh yeah.
Right at the same price.
Yeah.
Now drop the so find somewhere in between that and say that's probably the 3080 probably should have been priced closer to. I mean,
900.
I'd say 800, 850, somewhere in that range. Really is where it should have been priced, because you got to look at inflation, how things go with that, and then if you inflate 3080 a little bit, you get to $1,000 easy. But it's really that the 4080 is probably, when they launched it, you had the 4080 16 and the 4080 12. The 4080 12 was supposed to be more in line with the 4080, the 3080, which everybody and their brother was complaining, well, the 3080 is launching on the 104 die. Let me go look at something so I can make sure I'm speaking, not out of turn, but I do believe, yes, the 2080 graphics processor. Care to know which die that launched on? The 104 variant. The 80 series never used to launch on the 102 die, on a cut down 102 die. They only did that with the 3080 because the 3080, because they pushed the 3090 so far up. The 3080 makes sense on the 104 die. It always did. It's not supposed to be top tier level performance. And there was that leak about this could have been the Titan. Did you see that? It was basically,
yeah.
It was basically a 3090 Ti or a 4090 with a 4-slot cooler instead of a 3-slot.
Yeah.
But
and
because it pushed 600 watt TDP.
Yeah.
But I mean, people also forget that the 80102 die, it's rated for 800 watts because of the ADA, because of ADA in general's, hopper and the hopper based stuff that goes along with it. So I mean,
man, I really want to see a new Titan. I don't know about you, but I'm.
I don't think you're going to get a Titan this generation. I think you might get a refresh, like a 5000 series refresh, where they launch a Titan.
I saw something about Blackwell.
Well, I don't.
Days
I mean,
ago.
you might not, because I don't know if Blackwell is going to be ready this year in 2023. Usually GPUs run 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And usually there's a refresh mid-cycle, which is usually when you see the TI cards. Now, what I would imagine is if you do see that, you would see a TI-based card. It's not going to be the full die once again. And it's going to be because they found somewhere to get some performance enhancements out of because once again, What is the holdback that causes this thing to burn through power like nobody's business? It's not the GPU, guys. It's the memory controller. Once again, the memory controller is doing this because, once again, the Ada RTX 6000 Enterprise, which has all of the CUDA core, all the SMs enabled, it's not going to have quite as high clock speed, obviously, but it's not going to be cut down as much as people think. But it's still running on the ECC version of G6, but a faster variant of G6. And it's only going to use 320 watts. It is 110%. And that's like public knowledge. So, I mean, that's out there. But I mean, that's like, guys, you've got to know better than it ain't the. Like, you can't. Don't think that there's a reason that they do things the way they do things. It's 100% going to be totally different to everybody. Where is GA? Where's AD? So, and the difference is too, you once again, you're going to see the mobile stuff coming out too at some point. That's probably going to be highly competitive as well, and it's going to put a mobile card that'll come out there that will probably be very competitive, you know, and probably push the ever-loving mess out of okay, here it is. So the 8, they actually have this here. So because it has the full die, but it's got, so it's the full, all of the shading units and ROPs, but it doesn't have the same clock speed. It's a little bit slower. Actually,
I'm gonna pull that tab in.
I'll drag it up here. Yeah. But I also want to have the other one up real quick. So hang on a second, because I can look at the. Just looking at the relative performance on another one too. Tech. Let me just do this because I want to see the actual. I want to see the relative performance myself while I'm doing this. All right, so if I look at the A or the 4090 real quick. Change back here. So the 4090's clock speeds are as stated. It has a base clock. Oh, wow. 4090 base clock. All right, so can you see the base clock up here? I'm going to highlight it. The base clock of the
I'm waiting on the screen.
I just highlighted it. It's 2175 megahertz. So it's 2.1 gigahertz.
Oh,
for the Ada 6000.
The Ada. Yeah.
So the 4090, 2235 megahertz.
Base. It's not
that much worse, but guess what? It's got a higher boost clock, 2535 to 2520. Once again, the memory bandwidth is what's slower there. So, and I think this is actually wrong. I think it has 19 gigabit per second effective memory.
God, is it? It's $7,400 MSRP.
That's what they say right now, but I mean, we'll see. All right.
I mean, I'm buying it for less, but Jesus.
So the reason it's performing so much better is because, and yeah, here's the TDP, 300 watts. Guys, it's not the GPU itself, it's the physical memory controller on the GPU that's being pushed because of G6X. You're getting 68 gigabytes a second of bandwidth on the graphics processor ADA 6000, you're getting 1,000 gigabits per second. Gigabytes a second, sorry, not gigabits, gigabytes a second on the, you're getting a terabyte a second on the RTX 4090. That, okay, relative performance here. Once again, this thing, the 7900 XTX is 75% slower than that, though. Like that, and this thing, okay, yeah, you're not buying this to game on. We know that, guys. But you're doing it with 300 watts versus doing it with 450 watts
minimum.
Yeah, like that's, come on.
I'm
Memory
not
controllers
super.
burn some stuff, guys.
I'm not super excited about the 16 pin on the ADA, but
Ada doesn't have a 16 pin.
it says for
That's
design.
wrong.
Okay.
That's not true. That's not a true statement. That needs to be fixed.
Okay.
It's a single 8-pin CPU power connector.
Same as before.
Same as before, and it's not 300 watts. Technically, it's 320 because that's the max you can draw on the 8-pin with the PCI Express power pole. But they're saying 300 watts TDP still. They're calling it the same thing. But I mean, it's like, guys, that's, like I said, there's a few misnomers. Some of this stuff was literally just copied and pasted from the other one, from the RTX A6000.
If we go to the PNY website or like the NVIDIA website,
Yeah, you
sure,
gotta
it's
go to
accurate.
PNY actually. If you're gonna do it, you gotta go to PNY.
Yeah.
Because the NVIDIA one still doesn't give you like all the shader cores and all that stuff.
Hmm.
PNY gives you all the specs.
So why is AMD not here?
Well, yeah. So why is AMD not here? It's pretty simple. The fabric, man. Anytime you build something out and it's going over fabric, it's gonna crush it. It's gonna struggle with all that. And it struggles with it primarily. See, and I hate this because it still shows the connector, but it's because it's the picture of the dang A6000.
Yeah.
I wonder if you can zoom in on that and see what that says. Oh no, that's the sync and stereo connector.
Yeah. Oh,
Quadrisync.
okay.
Yeah, that's the quadrisync and
Right.
stereo connector. That is the right.
Right.
Thing.
Right.
Which it has those on the A6000. They just moved back.
Right.
But yeah, here you go. I mean,
Cool.
it gives you the information.
I'm be getting one of those in mid January probably.
Notice this here. They are using a faster version of G6. They're using 19 gigabit per second G6, regular G6 PCC memory.
Versus
the 16 gigabit per second.
Oh, okay.
So it is faster. All right. Well, let's go to the next thing. So this is kind of funny, and I have this on here. So just know for now, until they work out some bugs, maybe the drivers get better, but you're not going to get 25% performance out of the 7900 XTX, guys. You're not going to get 20. You're not going to. You might get 10, maybe 5% more from drivers. Not 20. Not going to happen. So the comical thing that's up next on the list, and it's just comical because it makes me laugh. A developer found a way to run Windows 7 on a 5 megahertz CPU with 128 megs of RAM. Yes, he had to strip Windows extremely far down, but he got it to work. That just shows you Windows is bloated as all get out. That's the only reason I wanted to pull this up. I thought it was funny. It's a true...
28 minutes to boot.
Yep. 28 minutes to boot. I mean, dude, that just cracks me up hard when I think about it. But
wow.
The last thing we'll talk about real quickly here though is, so the 4070 Ti, like there's been some leaked pictures from an MSI based card, and it's basically the 4080 12 gig. Is that it? Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and make a wild estimation, because they're not gonna try to. I mean, what they're gonna do with that is they're gonna cut the price way the heck down. Probably into the range of a. I mean, they're not launching anything because they still have a crap ton of Ampere stock. So, I mean, if we see a 4050 in 2023, I'll be shocked. You're gonna what you're gonna see in 2023 is all of the professional GPUs get launched. Why? Because they get their R&D money back with the professional GPUs. And so when you've got a 4080, basically fully enabled 4080, that's going for twice the price that it's going for on its, consumer based partner, they're going to sell the crap out of that thing. And then the 40, go ahead.
Like an Ada 5000.
Yep, like an Ada 5000, an Ada 4000, Ada 2000. Those cards, they'll come out all the way, because basically you're charging double to 2.5 times the price for what they would sell for in the consumer marketplace. They'll get all their R&D money back, or most of it, I should say, and then they'll launch them. Then you'll start seeing the 4050s and all that, because at that point, by the end of 2023, early 2024, they'll be getting ready for next gen. And so to do that, what do? They start clearing out supply. How do you clear out supply? You price it cheaply and get it out the door. Take the disabled ones and get them out the door quick. So that's what'll happen. Likely the 4070 Ti will probably come out, mid Q1, late Q1. But it'll probably come out about March, I think. About the same, or launch about March, about the same time that they launch the 5000, 4000, 2000 Ada series. And it'll be the 4080 12 gig. That's all it's going to be, guys. There's no reason to rebrand it, and they're just rebranding a card, and they'll just price it. Hopefully, they'll price it more effectively at that point in time. But that's about it. Outside of the last two things, the hot takes in the holiday season. So had some fun this holiday season. Had to do some reconfiguring after I had a profile fail. That was a fun one. Couple of hot takes though. I'll say them. You get your opinions too, real quick on them. HEDT is coming back in 2023. I think that's a hot take. We finally see the return of a not necessarily the name the HEDT type names, but we see the return of a HEDT like product, I should say. Something that's above an i9 class, but not quite a upper end Xeon scalable or something like that. Personal hot take. Other personal hot takes. We're going to have a lot of fun. 2020 is going to be a big year. 2023 is going to be a big year for us. You'll see us a lot more. You're going to see a lot more guests. They're starting to line them up. Hopefully the first quarter you'll see probably 1.5, 2 times the number of episodes. Try to break them down to less than one a month. A lot of comments, a lot of conversations. Less newsy topics, but more discussions on what could be. I think will be the fun thing. But yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, thanks to the viewer, you guys that come out and watch and stream and then go back and rewatch and do all that stuff, we appreciate you. Hopefully we have some more viewers join in on the fun, but if not, we'll see you in 2023, and